Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's public hearing, public hearing of the Town Council of the Town of Los Gatos. Is my mic on? Yeah. We have a full house today, and we have several fun things to announce in the beginning. But before we do that, I would like to, Madam Clerk, to call the roll.
Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Steve Leonardis.
Here.
Councilmember Marcia Jensen.
Here.
Councilmember Barbara Spector.
Here.
Vice Mayor Rob Rennie.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Mariko Sayoc.
Here. And before we begin, we always invite a member of our school community to come forward to help lead us in tonight's Pledge of Allegiance. And so I'd like to introduce and ask Nolan Haar to come forward. And actually, I don't have a... Actually, Nolan, I'm going to meet you down here. That way we have a microphone for you. Okay, so come on over. So Nolan he's a third grader at Dave's Avenue Elementary. And he has he's accomplished quite a bit for having only been in third grade. He is with the Student Council. You may recognize him. He was featured recently in the Weekly for his science project at the Dave's Avenue Science Fair. He is an avid sports player. He plays baseball, basketball, and will be joining the Los Gatos JCC swim team this spring. Is that correct? And he loves to read, is fascinated by science and weather, and would like to start volunteering at a local animal shelter. Anything else you'd like to add, Nolan?
No.
Okay. So tonight he is here to join us in our Pledge of Allegiance, and so if all of you can please stand. So you take it away, okay?
Okay. Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So thank you again for coming. So April is National Poetry Month, and at our last meeting, we were honored to have our town's poet laureate. He came forward and he had actually written a poem just for the month, and at this meeting, we get to hear from 4 of our local poets. And so before we begin, I'd like to introduce one of our community leaders, Joanne Telesfor, to come forward. And Joanne has been instrumental in bringing the arts to our community. Last month, actually, as chair of Art Now, she was instrumental in bringing the best high school artists to the new museum. And tonight, she is bringing forward the best poets from our middle school to share their poetry with us. And so I'd like Joanne to just explain the context of how she met these 4 and what we anticipate to hear tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I was thinking, how long have we been doing poetry in the chambers, which we actually started a while ago, and I was counting the years, and I think it's been 9, could be 10 years that we've been doing this. And when we decided to do that those many years ago, one of the traditions that we developed was with Fisher Middle School. and their English classes. And this year, I am so proud of the 4 poets that you'll be hearing from who will be delivering their original poems based on a Where I'm From poem that was originated by George Ella Lyon. And he wanted to know, when do you get to be from a place? What roots you to that place? And besides being a poem, you'll see that it's going to be a map that takes us on a personal journey of these students, their places that they stay, their homes, their neighborhoods, their families, maybe the food they eat. All of those things contribute to making these 4 students who they are and enhancing our understanding of who lives in our community and the connection that we might have to them. I wanted to give thank you to Sarah Landry. Are you here tonight? Do I see you out there? She was trying to make it, and I hope she did, but thank you for working with these students. The first student, they'll each introduce themselves and their poem, but I will introduce Robert Nathanson. Robert?
So, as she said, my name is Robert Nathanson, and my poem is called Where I'm From. I'm from jelly-filled donuts, ease and cold ice and snow, taller than the house, with grass and bugs covering the backyard beneath the towering snow. I'm from moving to Los Gatos, making this amazing place what I call home. I'm from being with my dog, following like a shadow beneath, all around, and always beside, living as long as I can remember. I'm from being born 1 month early, with less breath in my lungs, still finding my voice, being heard, and sharing my opinion. Small lungs does not mean small voice. I'm from the friendship from my first dog. His words were filling, his tenderness soothing, his heart unwavering, his strengths unbendable, the whole is unmendable. I'm from new friendships with another dog, replacing a spot in my heart where my old dog once sat. Like in a hotel in Japan, someone must check out for someone to check in. I'm from my new dog, Bailey. She flutters with life and playfulness, reminding me that life's biggest problems can be solved with peanut butter and tummy rubs. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Helene Bablis, and my poem's called Where I'm From. I am from laughter, sweat, and grit. I am from prancing and playing in the rain, glistening in the lightning, as my brother and sister stand with me. I am from hard work. I am from the beach and the waves, as if the rhythm of the push and pull matched my heartbeat. I am from late night dinners to dreadful singing, from the pipe downs to the hand-me-downs. I am from the navy blue couch watching Avatar repeatedly, from the little me begging not to watch it again. I am from the Spartans, from the cats, from a workhorse and a mastermind, from the bullet that was shot to being here with us. I am from the heart of kindness, from Curious George, to the loyalty of my companions showing me the path to success. In front of my house, memories rage, digging up new ones till they're made. I am from those moments replaying in my mind before any laughter in front of my family's gray house sitting in the hills of Los Gatos.
Hello, my name is William Marr. My poem is called Where I'm From. I am from Los Gatos, from California, from the movie Caddyshack. Funny, humorous, it looks like spending time with family. I am from a town full of great people, the place of funny feelings who's made me, me. I am from the darkness, from the light. I'm from the desert and the sand. From cartoons and books, I'm from success with an amount of failure and fame. I'm from my mom and my dad, Jacob and Laurel, from family, from friends and enemies. Under the shadow of myself, where I'm from is me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maddie Tatar, and this is where I'm from. I am from astronomers, charting foreign lands and new horizons. From the rusty spades in the garage, rarely used but never forgotten, digging us up and planting us in new locations. From the suitcases stored under the bed, with ghosts of places traveled and thrills of places to see, from Los Gatos to Plymouth to Salvador, Brazil. I'm from pencil shavings and eraser marks, the crinkle of written on paper, the indescribable smell of a brand new book. I'm from the days of playing endlessly with my neighbors, to homework at the marked up kitchen table and sizzling cuisines, different each night. I'm from the beating of my heart and the rhythm of my step, from Beethoven's symphonies resonating out of the violin, to performing hundreds of Broadway musicals in the shower. I'm from the paths I have paved, the friends I have made, the times I spoke up and was proud. I'm from cheerful occasions spent with my family, laughing and joking until too tired to carry on. From French words spoken to me by my father, an always insightful mother, brothers that are always willing to play, and a pug that I couldn't do without. I am from memories gathered and stored, constantly dotting my mind and creating a constellation of who I am. I am from stardust held in the hands of adventurers and opportunity seekers, building me a road to travel on and look back at where I'm from. Thank you.
I hope that you could appreciate the imagery that you heard tonight and how it captured not only probably their lives, but probably we could relate to a lot of it as well, and how they captured Los Gatos, and I had the feeling that you all love living here. Thank you.
We look forward to seeing more of the work that you may be doing in the future. So thank you for sharing that with us. And because all great things happen in threes, our last fun celebration for tonight is our awardee, the recipient of this month's Small Business Big Applause. And tonight, I'm happy to award it to Los Gatos Meats and Smokehouse. So I'm going to hand this to you, and then I'm just going to, I have a copy myself, and I'm just going to read real quick what is on there, because I learned a lot here as well. So Los Gatos Meats and Smokehouse is one of the longest running businesses in Los Gatos, dating back as far as 1891. Los Gatos Meats and Smokehouse is currently located on University Avenue, is owned by family members John, Donna, and Brian Kiala, who have been running the business since 1991. It's a true family business where 4 generations may be seen working hard and enjoying the tradition and providing the community with fresh meat, sandwiches, and more. Los Gatos Meats and Smokehouse enjoys providing their products and services to many community organizations, fundraisers, and events, including food donations, sponsorships, sports coaching, and more, and through these opportunities have embraced the Los Gatos community as their neighbors, friends, and family. And I can certainly say that I have seen you guys are around town so often that every time I see any fundraiser, I just assume that you guys are there. And I want to thank you so much for all your contributions to our town.
Thank you.
So I'm going to pass this so you guys can introduce yourselves and then any words you'd like to share.
I'm John Kiala. I'm the father of all these children, and I'm so lucky. I feel so lucky to have my kids and my grandkids and everybody participating in the business and taking kind of pushing me out. But it's been a good business. We've lived in Los Gatos for over 45 years, and we've owned Los Gatos Meat for over 25 years. So it's really an honor to be part of the community and take part in charities and different things that the community has. Okay, here's my son, Brian.
Thank you. My name is Brian Kiala, and I've been living in Los Gatos 43 years. So again, I've coached the high school baseball team here. I've coached numerous pony league teams, softball teams. And it's just a great honor to get an award like this from the town. We really appreciate the council and the town of Los Gatos for this great honor. And it's just, we work really hard, a lot of those families. So I'm sure people walked in there and seen us yelling at each other probably more times than not. But all that stems from the passion we put into the business, the passion we put into the town. And we really like this area, and we really like to keep Los Gatos great. You know, one of the greatest comments we always get are when, nice thing is a lot of young kids now, I see these kids coming up and talking. A lot of them come in for sandwiches from Fishler. A lot of the kids that, when I started in the business, were coming in from the high school, now are having kids and coming back. And that to me is one of the greatest honors, because they really, truly appreciate, you know, what Los Gatos means. When they fly in on a plane coming back from college, their first stop is Los Gatos Meats. And so people, just gives another great reason to come to Los Gatos. You can run the trail and eat a big old sandwich, and you still feel good about yourself. So, yeah, we do really appreciate it. You know, and my kids go to school with a lot of the members here, and so really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm okay. You covered everything. That's my granddaughter. She's in the business, been with us for a year in the business. She came out of college and went to work for us, so she'll be speaking later. I just want to say that I am just thrilled with this honor, and I have all my life have wanted to belong to a community. My dad being a Navy man, we moved a lot. When we came to Los Gatos, settled, I says, this is it. I'm digging my roots here. My kids are going to grow up here. And we did it. They grew up here. Brian was born in Los Gatos. We went through all the schools, and now it's such an honor to be recognized, and we're so thrilled to be a part of this community. We love it. We love all of the people in the community. And this is just quite an honor, and I feel like my dreams have gone up and over the moon. So thank you all, and do come see us at Los Gatos Meats. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Schultz, closed session report.
Yes, good evening. Prior to tonight's regular session, council met in closed session to discuss real property negotiations. No action was taken by the council. It requires reporting under the Brown Act.
Thank you. And at this time, the council members will go through various reports that they'd like to share with the council since our last public hearing. I'll start with Councilman Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor. Since our last meeting, I attended 3 meetings on behalf of the town of Los Gatos. One was for the West Valley Sanitation District, one was for the Santa Clara Valley Water District, and one was for the Treatment Plant Advisory Committee. And all the agendas and things are posted online.
Councilmember Jensen?
I have nothing to report.
Okay. Since our last public hearing, there was a community meeting that Assemblymember Evan Lowe had in Los Gatos. I was there, as well as Vice Mayor and Councilmember Leonardis. And since our last meeting, Cities Association had their meeting. This is where all the cities in Santa Clara meet on regional issues. And there were the big issue that was discussed at that time. It was the night before Santa Clara County was about to go into court over their lawsuit for a preemptive lawsuit for funds that may be lost with immigration enforcement. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. On in addition to the one you mentioned, I also on 4/6 attended the VTA board meeting as an alternate. I was observing rather than sitting in the chair at that time. On 4/8, as a VTA board member, I got a tour of the new BART station, construction tour, the two new BART stations at Milpitas and Berryessa. On 4/8, I attended the Almond awareness event at the Arab American Cultural Event Center, where Zoe Lofgren was the keynote speaker. 4/10, 4/10. In addition to stopping in with the mayor, I also attended the Risk Management Oversight Committee for the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority, where I'm chair. On 4/12, was my first member as a sitting LAFCO commissioner instead of an alternate. The big talk there, the big item there was a 7-acre annexation into Montecito. Several commissioners wanted to see progress on annexing the county pockets before allowing this annexation. So just so you know what LAFCO is thinking about filling county pockets. On 4/12, I chaired the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board. Significant discussion there was on the type of renewable energy to buy versus the cost trade-offs. On 4/13, I attended the VTA Policy Advisory Committee, where we reviewed a revised next-gen service plan. If you recall, the old plan had Los Gatos losing bus service to downtown and the high school. In the revised plan, they now have bus service to downtown, past the high school, and to El Camino High School in El Camino Hospital, and it continues on to the West Valley College. The other thing to note is they actually increased the frequency of the bus to downtown Los Gatos, so I think we're very happy with that. The VTA was trying to do a 80%, and what was so it was 20% coverage, 80% more ridership. They ended up changing it by 3% to be 23% coverage to satisfy some of the concerns through all that process. So I think they're made a lot of good progress with their final plan that's now going before the board. And on 4/17, I received a board member orientation for VTA.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since the last meeting, I had informal meetings with members of our volunteer and business communities in downtown Los Gatos. I also attended a program presented by Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren on the issue of immigration, in which, among other points of her presentation, she discussed what, if any, requirements are imposed by the federal government on local governments, and what, if anything, the federal government can do within a local jurisdiction. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pravetti, Town Manager Report.
Yes, thank you. I have 3 items for you this evening. First, Art in the council chambers that you see here will have a reception on Thursday, April 20th at 6 p.m., and everyone is welcome to join us. On Sunday, we're having our Spring Into Green event starting at 10 a.m., and at 11:30, our mayor will give the state of the town, and there'll be other festivities, so please join us then. And finally, we are continuing our Youth Commission recruitment. Applications are due on April 28th. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, we are about to look at our consent agenda. We have 10 items that are placed there. These are items that will be acted on in one motion unless something is pulled. At this time, I do not have any cards from the council members to pull any item, and I don't see anyone moving forward from the audience, so I look to the council for a motion. Councilmember Jensen?
Move approval of the consent calendar consisting of items 1 through 10.
Okay. Councilmember Spector?
I'm going to second, noting that with regard to agenda item 2, the staff has given us a correction which I would incorporate.
Okay.
And I would include that in my motion.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Consent items passes 5-0. Okay. We are now at verbal communications, and this is the portion of our meeting where a member of the public may speak on an item that is not related to an agenda topic. At this time, I have 2 cards, and so the first person is Madison Lasky. Is this okay? So are you coming together? Okay, so it's Madison Lasky and Ava Torin. So you'll have 3 minutes to speak. The yellow indicates 30 seconds remaining, and then red indicates your time is up.
Okay.
And if you could just identify yourselves.
Okay, I'm Maddie Lasky.
And I'm Ava Torin.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Town Council members. We are here today to talk about the parking situation at Los Gatos High School and the area surrounding the school. After hearing all sides of the issue, I hope we will be able to come to a solution which is beneficial to all parties. So, the issue is, school has the duty to teach all the youth within the school boundary. Working parents are required to transport themselves to school, and mountain students require cars to commute to school.
Our solution is schools should tighten down on parking permits. Since we do purchase our parking permits, we have a solution for our permits to work at the 90-minute parking time slots, or at least be for 2 hours at the 90 minutes, some other way of parking since we do purchase our permits. Also, the school needs to monitor the number of permits versus the number of parking spaces. We are aware that there is construction on campus. I want to mention that we have a rule of senioritis, as it's called at our school, where seniors do have priority over others. There has been situations where underclassmen are getting permits, and they like to give people who live in the mountains or far away permits, but some of the school staff is actually not aware of the permits that are being handed out. Another one is that schools should increase parking capacity after the conclusion of the construction. Mr. Rogers, our school vice principal of facilities, had mentioned that we cannot build an underground parking lot, which was an idea by a lot of our students, since there are a bunch of hazards for that, but we wanted to bring the idea of maybe building a parking structure above the parking lot. Just an idea.
And then we have been presented with ideas to help the situation. For example, students within 2 miles should not drive, carpooling, and extra parking at Balzer Field. But due to the parking at Balzer Field, it takes the same time for us to get there and park and to walk to school as it takes the same time to just get to school early and park in the senior lot. So it just kind of doesn't really help.
Yeah, and obviously these solutions that we've been told, carpooling and all these, don't work. So we're trying to come up with a solution. Another problem is on Church Street. There's an issue where permits are where you can park there with a permit for 90 minutes, and the people have gotten tickets for before the 90-minute slot. And and there's also, we can't move our car during tutorial, which is another issue for us getting tickets as well.
So then we've decided that the town should be able to request the school to revoke permits for problematic individuals, such as littering or disruptive students.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to us, and I hope we can resolve the issue on behalf of all of the LGHS students.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much. This is timely that you spoke. We had a long discussion about this at our last meeting, and we'll make sure that when we meet with your principal and superintendent, we'll share some of the items that you shared with us. Okay. Okay, so we now move to our public hearings. Number 11, other business, PPW job number 13-31, Almond Grove Rehabilitation Project, Phase 2. Ms. Peterson, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Lisa Peterson, Town Engineer. Tonight I'm here to request that the Council approve the low bid for the Almond Grove Phase 2 project to Vanguard Construction, and also authorize the Town Manager to enter into an agreement with Vanguard, who is the low bidder for this project, for a total of $7,981,382. Also to approve a 3-year consultant material testing agreement with Nino and Moore for $273,837, and also to approve a budget adjustment to reduce the project budget down to $14,344,177. Of course, that would be contingent upon if council included any additive alternates to the award. Did I do this again? There we go. We opened bids for the Almond Grove Phase 2 project on April 5th, and we opened them publicly at the clerk's office. We had a total of 3 bidders, and the low bidder came from Vanguard Construction for about $7 million. Vanguard Construction is the contractor that completed the Broadway and Bachman work in 2016. So per council's previous direction at the February 7th meeting, we did remove sections of the asphalt concrete street areas that were within the Almond Grove Phase 2 project area from the base bid. However, we did then go ahead and include those as additive alternates. And that was specifically for council's reference, and additionally, if council did want to include those for additional scope to the contract, they would have that ability to do that. So, of course, inclusion of any of these additive alternates would require that we increase the cost of the approved agreement for Vanguard to a corresponding amount with the additive alternate. And just to remind council, those areas of asphalt streets were Bayview, and that was a section between Pennsylvania and Main Street. The bid came in for that at $380,000. Also, there was a section on Bean, and that was a section that was west of Massal. That bid came in at $160,000. And there was also a section on Nicholson. It's a steep area, that steep section on Nicholson, and between Glen Ridge and Massal. So again, as I mentioned, any inclusion of these would require us to increase the award amount to Vanguard. And here is the map, again, that shows those areas of asphalt streets within the Almond Grove Phase 2 project limits, and those do correspond with the additive alternates 1, 2, and 3. I did want to go quickly through the fiscal table that's in your report. We did change up the fiscal table slightly, so I wanted to go through that with council just for your information. The number that we have at the top left of the fiscal table does show the $17 million number. That is the total project budget for the Almond Grove project. This number is found in the capital improvement project budget book for fiscal year 16-17. We're also showing the expenditures and commitments that we have for fiscal year 16-17. Additionally, we are showing the total amount that we are expecting for the Vanguard contract and material testing, which is showing at about $8.2 million. And something else that we have shown is we pulled out some other Phase 2 costs just for council's reference. We are showing what our anticipated staffing cost is. This is for transparency's sake, so council can see, what we anticipate those costs to be. Additionally, we have shown a project reserve, And this is really because this is a 3-year project. The staff costs are over a 3-year period. Also, during typically our construction contracts would be a couple months during the summer. So when you have a contract that's lasting for 3 years, there can be more cost uncertainty. So ultimately, if we look at what the project budget is and look at the expenditures and commitments and additionally our anticipated costs on the project, and we subtract that from the project budget, we would have about $3.3 million that the council would have available to appropriate during the 17-18 budget process. Now, additionally, if the council did decide to include all of the additive alternates, that number would go down to about $2.2 million. So our recommendation tonight is to approve the award to Vanguard Construction as the low responsive bidder, to approve a 3-year consultant material testing agreement with Nino and Moore, and also to approve a budget adjustment. Thank you very much, and I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you, Ms. Peterson. Councilmember Jensen.
I think I've got 4 questions, if that's okay. I'm not sure they're all for, well, one's not for Ms. Peterson. My first question is, the first 3 questions, I'm just trying to make sure that assumptions I'm making are correct. So awarding the contract to the low bidder, number 1, to Vanguard, is not optional. That's required by state law, correct?
Yes.
Number 2, is that similarly not optional and required by state law?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Number 2, the consultant, is that also not optional and required by state law because they're the low bidder?
Well, again, that was a consultant contract, so that was a request for proposals was put out, and there was a process that was put in place to review and select the most qualified consultant. So we don't select them by low bid.
All right, so it is optional, but the hiring, if you will, of a consultant is not optional.
Correct.
Okay. Finally, for number 3, this may be, well, actually, number 3 is probably for Mr. Schultz. When council last considered the Almond Grove, Ms. Peterson said it was in February, council made a motion and voted to take out the 3 sections that are now being proposed as being put in. Doesn't that amount to a reconsideration under our rules, and that such that we cannot do that tonight because it's not the next meeting?
No, in the sense that although you took them out, you agreed to have them as alternatives, and that's the way they were bid. So now the motion is do you completely leave them out and go for the 7,000, or do you want to have any of those alternatives put into the construction work now that you know the exact costs?
Okay. My recollection was that we voted to not do it, but I'll accept your recollection. My final question is with respect to the $3 million, number 3. The recommendation is to retain it in an Almond Grove fund. Is there any reason that the council could not take that money out, put it back into the general capital improvement fund, and use that to raise the pavement condition index for the entire town?
That would be a decision that you would make at budget time. So tonight we just want to understand how much money needs to be held in reserve for that budget discussion in mid-May. But that would be one of your options.
Okay, so just to follow up on that to make sure I understand. So the recommendation says, approve a budget adjustment, decrease the authorized project budget, blah, blah, retain the excess up to $3.3 million in the Almond Grove reserve for allocation.
It's an accounting.
Do we need to do that? Is that the process that needs to happen in anticipation of the budget in May in using that 3.3 in some different way?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll ask a question I know the answer to, just so it's out there. When you presented up here, you had $7 million on the first page that they bid, but then your table had 7.9, and that I don't think you mentioned that it jumped to 7.9 because you had a 15% contingency. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, so at this time, I will open it up for public testimony. I have 2 speaker cards. The first from Angelia Dorner.
Hello, Angelia Dorner, a very proud resident of the Almond Grove. First off, thank you. Thank you very much for putting up for the last 3 years through all these discussions. My first talk here was October 4th of 2014. Should have been 1914. A long haul for residents, staff, as well as for you. So again, I really do thank you. I do have just a couple of items that I'd like to share with you. As far as the 3 items, the 3 alternative items, I really don't think there's any reason to do Bean or Cat's Hill, other than the curbs and maybe a couple sidewalk slabs on Cat's Hill. But for Bayview, there is significant drainage issues on house number 12, which is a dead end where Pennsylvania comes in. I guess it was just never done properly when they did that overlay on that piece of concrete. So I really ask you to reconsider that small piece of Bayview. It's a small piece. I don't know why the cost is that high, other than the fact that I don't think they took the old concrete out, which we may need to consider if it's going to ruin how long the overlay might last. The other thing is to confirm the scope of the work to be done on 3 driveways on Bayview. No other streets have this kind of situation where it looks like an entire driveway or private property area is being done with concrete or something. There's only 3. None of the rest of the driveways anywhere done that way. The other thing is with utilities. We have always been at a disadvantage of knowing what our utilities, the state of our utilities are, because the roads have been so old. No one's ever been able to give us any answers on how old is the water main, how old is this, what's being done. We know that there are upgrades being done now. I've been asking for this kind of information for over 2 years, and I think this is the opportune time to share with residents what is the status of all of our utilities, because no one really has that information, including the utilities when asked. The last thing is these numbers. I don't know why it's taking so long to close out phase 1, but I would ask on the first 2 bullets that the policy committee consider looking at establishing a real policy for what happens to these budget amounts once you do approve or authorize a bid, and how those remaining funds would be handled. I also want to remind you that prior management of the town took advantage, or appeared to take advantage, of the current purchasing policy by having a lot of things just below $50,000, which ate up a lot of money. Staff costs, I really don't get this at all. They have $990 in this thing. The Wilsey proposal includes $111 that we've already authorized. Over 3 years, that's $367. The Street Scope project, which only lasts 3 to 4 months, is another $291. So for summer jobs only, that's a total of staff costs of $658,000, which...
Thank you, Ms. Dorner. You have a question? Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Dorner, so probably not that important a question, but I just want to make sure I'm clear. So you talked about there's 2 houses on the section of Bayview that are in question of getting concrete in front of them. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, they're sort of both kind of in front of Pennsylvania. The first one on the corner has a driveway that drops down quickly. Is that the one where the drainage problem is, or is it the second house in?
The second house in, it's number 12, and if you stand in front of their house, you can look straight up Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And the water just pours down Pennsylvania and goes into their garage. I mean, it goes like through their driveway and into their garage, et cetera. So I know that resident had written something before on that, and he also brought it up at one of the most recent resident meetings. And I just don't see how, maybe there's some other way to fix that issue, but I think that's a big issue not to ignore. The redheaded stepchild part is as well, just because, it's a lot of money, though. But there's got to be some way to help that resident specifically, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Dorner. Our next speaker, Reed Hornberger.
This was not planned. I'm the resident at 12 Bayview. I don't know Angela, but it just turned out this way. Can I put that on, please? Okay, so first of all, I don't have the big thank you slide that Angela did, but I do want to say, Reed Hornberger, 12 Bayview. I do believe that the details in the planning and the work that's gone on with Lisa's team and Matt and the work that's been done by Vanguard that I've seen is really quite extraordinary. It's solid work, it's quality, there's been good communication. So I want to talk about Bayview. I live there. First of all, that when I got the bids and looked through them like anybody else that did, it is a big cost, so I wonder why. First, to be clear, this section of Bayview that is excluded today is about 160 feet of the street. It's not a little stub or a breakout. It's 20 to 25% of the entire street if you step it off. The second thing is the flooding issue. So, not as bright as I'd like it to be, but what you're seeing here is one of the days when Lisa dispatched the street service workers out to Bayview. We have a culvert on the left side of Pennsylvania, and we have the sidewalks and usual gutters on the right side. When the culvert on the left side or the gutters overflow way up Pennsylvania, it's a 750-yard run right to my front yard. And so we face flooding issues. It's not just my house that you see here. It is indeed the house next door that has sandbags set out below us. These are the folks that are right on the corner of Main Street and Bayview. So there is a flooding problem. Now, when I've worked with Lisa and Ryan Doe of her team a while back, part of the cost is to actually grind the street down 3 or 4 more inches, because the curb in front of my house is only about 3 inches. It's not a standard 7-inch or whatever that measurement is. So part of it is we literally have to take the street down to at least mitigate some of the flooding of the homes there, not just to the left of me, but 2 homes to the right as well. That when I block this with my sandbags, it goes in their garage and yards as well. The other thing is that we have steel drain plates down in front of our home that were set some time ago, and these plates need to be repositioned and set so they properly manage the overflow of the water when it comes down. Finally, it's a busy section, as people have called out. There's 3 driveways. There's the pathway up to Fairview. There's 5 handicap ADA ramps that have to be reconsidered. But I do believe at this point, when we look at the bids, with the residual that exists in those bids, I think it's proper and appropriate to finish Bayview Avenue so that all of the Almond Grove district is properly prepared. And the Vanguard people have taken care to look at the wall there on Bayview that also has to be preserved as part of the construction.
Thank you, Mr. Hornberger. Let me see if there's any questions. Council members, any questions? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And our last speaker is John Shepherdson.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Briefly, 4 points. 1, the Almond Grove streets, the paving that's been done looks really good. Bravo. It's a good start. Second point would be an encouragement on my part, and I think many others, to wisely use the funds for the further work to be done. And last point is thank you for all your work on this project.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shepherdson. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, that's all the speakers I have for this item, so I will close public testimony and look to council for further questions of staff, Vice Mayor, and then Council Member Spector.
Thank you, Mayor Sack. So I guess let me just lead in to say I'm really happy that Vanguard is the lowest bidder. I got a lot of feedback from residents that they did an excellent job with working with people. So, kudos to Vanguard. And so that's really good that not only are we saving a bunch of money, but we got a very good contractor that I think people will be happy with if they continue the same kind of work. I have maybe 2 questions. First question is, Vanguard was $1 million less than the next bidder. Why were they able to be $1 million less?
So Vanguard was actually, I think it's about $2 million less. And when talking with Vanguard, they felt that they had a good handle on the work out there because they had done both Broadway and Bachman previously. I think they had a lot of processes that were already in place. So types of material submittals and things that they have to put in, things that will be the same this time around. I think it was advantageous for them because they see that those are things that they're going to already have put in place. They're not going to have to put a lot of effort in there. They have the crews that have already done the work, so they understand how to do the work. I think that we were able to have a very good collaborative relationship with them, still getting them to perform a very high quality work out there and a lot of public outreach. And like with any contractors, if they're looking to fill their schedule, they will, of course, provide the best bid possible.
Thank you. I have a second question. So let me go to the Bayview section in question. Last time we discussed this quite a bit, and I really struggle with the idea that it's $400,000 to effectively change asphalt to concrete for 2 houses worth. There's not even any houses on the other side of the street. I went back and looked at it closer. I see lots of cracks in the asphalt, so it doesn't look like it covered the crack slabs underneath it very well. So I'm, was starting to rethink that. I guess a couple questions. So there's only sidewalk on one side of the street. Are you planning to add sidewalk on the other side of the street? Is that part of where the cost is coming from? The question is really trying to understand why so much cost to add that section.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things that we need to keep in mind regarding Bayview. There's a couple conforms that are going to happen there. There's 2 major streets that it intersects. So it's intersecting with Pennsylvania. It's also intersecting with Maine. And with this type of concrete pavement material that we're using, when you have those types of intersections, you're going to have special types of conforms that go along with that cost more money. And additionally, it also just require more reinforced concrete pavement, so those areas have higher amounts of reinforced concrete pavement than other sections of street. We also do have 5 new curb ramps, and although the curb ramps throughout the project from Vanguard's bid was what we would typically expect. Ramps have been coming in pretty high recently, so 5 ramps can add a significant amount of cost. I think the other thing that we need to keep in mind is that because of the flooding issue that was brought up, there are a number of storm drain improvements that are occurring on that. So there's additional trench drain that's being put in. We're doubling the amount of trench drain out there. We're putting in another inlet. We're putting in some more piping. Anytime a contractor gets into having to go underground, sometimes there is some cost uncertainty there. So there are times that they will up their costs because they're just not sure what they're going to run into. And to answer your question, there is an additional section of sidewalk that is being put in on the west side of the street, and there is a rock wall there that has to be dealt with. So all of those components put together probably was part of the reason the bid came in the way it did.
So if I could just follow on. So the trench drain wouldn't happen if we don't add this section. All of that, the drainage you just mentioned, will not happen.
All of that is part of the additive alternate, yes.
And then so that I'm trying to think about where the 5 curb ramps are. Are you having to do the curb ramps on the south side of Main Street also, even though Main's not getting the work?
Yeah, so we're putting some curb ramps there as well, correct.
And so do you feel like, Pennsylvania's a pretty steep street. Can you solve the flooding problem if you've got water coming down that street really fast?
Well, I think that no matter what council's decision is tonight, we certainly need to go out there and try to rectify this problem.
And the last piece, the speakers talked about basically higher curbs. Are you going to lower the street or raise the sidewalk to achieve this?
Oh, so in this instance, we are actually going to be lowering the street somewhat, which is one of the reasons that we're having some of those conforms and having to conform into driveways, which was mentioned.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple questions. First of all, when monies are set aside, for example, there's an additor of, let's say, a 10% contingency or 15% contingencies. If those monies are not used, where do they go and how does the council know where those monies went?
So what would happen with that money is it would stay in the project. When the project is closed out, that would be money that council could appropriate to other projects.
And when would council become aware of that fund of money, and in what process?
Typically, when we close out the project is when we know what the remaining funds are in the project.
And it would be reported back to council?
Yes.
Okay. And then going back to Bayview, I agree with the vice mayor. That was an issue that got quite a bit of discussion when we made these decisions. And if we changed the materials, well, right now, are we doing anything on Bayview on that portion of it?
No.
All right. So we're looking at what material we use, and then if we addressed it tonight, if we said, let's say concrete, would that go to the issues that were raised by the speaker?
If council decides they want to include the additive alternate tonight, it would include all of those elements that are currently shown on the project plans in additive alternate number 1, because that is what the contractor bid on.
And would those changes, modifications, address the issues raised by the speaker?
Yes, it would address the drainage problems.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Leonardis and then Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Sayoc. So, Ms. Peterson, you're saying it's an all or none on the alternate. Can we say we just want to do the Bayview portion, but take out the Bean portion and the Cat's Hill portion?
Sorry, so let me clarify. Because there are 3 additive alternates, the council can opt to include 1 or all 3 or 2 of the additive alternates in any order they would like. So you do not need to include Bean or Nicholson. You could just include additive alternate 1, which would be Bayview.
Thank you, and I have one more. I wanted to get a better understanding of the consultant testing agreement and why that is necessary.
Yeah, so any project that we do material testing. It's very important. And the way that most of our specifications are written, we have quality control and quality assurance. The town is responsible for quality assurance testing. So we want to go out there and make sure that the strengths are appropriate and that the strengths of the soil are appropriate, the strengths of the concrete and the asphalt. So we do testing within certain intervals that are actually specified by the specifications on every street. And it's basically to ensure that we have the best quality project and that our project is going to meet the 50, 100-year requirements of a concrete street that we are expecting it to meet.
One more follow-up. Being that we've worked with this construction group before, would this be necessary at this point? To me, it seems like $300,000 being spent to test work done after the fact for a company that we've already worked with, that everybody agrees has done a good job so far. So it seems like an unnecessary expense.
Anytime you're doing material testing, it's very important to verify that you are getting the quality that you're expecting. Ultimately, if you didn't do any material testing and then your street failed a year down the road, you wouldn't have any verification to say that, yes, the appropriate materials were used or the appropriate strengths, were made on those sections of the street. So it's really to protect the town if there's any failures on the project.
Councilmember Johnson.
Okay, I had a couple, but I'll just follow up on that. Protect the town against litigation if the street fails because we haven't done proper quality testing, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can you remind me what the pavement condition index is on that section of Bayview?
Yes, it's the PCI on that is a 74.
Okay. And is there any reason that the town could not address the drainage issues that have been brought up by the speaker, given a PCI 74 asphalt street? For example, grind it down, make the sidewalks bigger, make your drainage better.
I think, as I mentioned, no matter what council's decision is tonight, we will go out there. We need to make some drainage improvements and rectify the problem that is out there. So yes, we could.
Okay, so just so I make sure I understand your answer, there is absolutely no reason that the town cannot fix that drainage problem with an asphalt street.
We can fix the problem.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Councilmember Spector?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First question, following up on that, do you have a cost of doing the drainage repair if you don't do it through the, what is it, $400,000 estimate here?
I don't have that cost.
Do you have any sense of what it would be in terms of magnitude?
I think ultimately what we would have to do, if it was council's direction for us to correct that with the contractor, is we would have to go out there with the contractor and negotiate with them a change order to just put in the drainage improvements, and that would be a negotiated cost, so I couldn't tell you exactly what that would be.
And the contractor you're talking about is Vanguard?
Correct.
All right, and then lastly, following up on Mr. Leonardis, the consultant for the materials testing, is that something that we did with Broadway and Bachman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Sack. So when I went out there and looked at it again, it's a PCI of 74, which is above our 70 average that we want. But when I look at the street, I do see a lot of cracking, and I'm guessing that it's aligned with the slabs underneath. So I suspect you could probably fill it, but really how long before we'd have to do basically a reconstruction on that street anyway? Which I would assume if we didn't change it to concrete would be a pull off the asphalt and put new asphalt on top of cracked slabs. How far are we from having to do that anyway, which we know gets more expensive?
I think you would need to look at it similar to the way all the other concrete streets were looked at within the Almond Grove. As we mentioned during the discussion, asphalt versus concrete. Concrete lasts longer. Asphalt is less expensive. However, you do have to have treatments more often. When those treatments would come up on this particular section would probably depend on how fast it continues to deteriorate.
Any further questions? Okay. Would anyone like to venture towards a motion? Councilmember Johnson?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion, but I'd like to break it down with the recommendation that we have on number 1, tackling different issues. So the first motion is to approve the award for the low bid from Vanguard Construction, Almond Grove Phase 2 for $7.9 million and a 15% contingency.
Okay. Councilmember Leonard?
I will second that.
Okay. Any comments on this motion? Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? So that first motion passes unanimously.
Okay. So my second motion goes with paragraph 2, which is to approve a 3-year consultant materials testing agreement with Nino and Moore for the Almond Grove Phase 2 reconstruction project for $273,837, including a 10% contingency.
I have a question for staff on this item. Is it possible for us to postpone the vote on this portion this evening until we get more information on this topic? Because it seemed to me that this was not an issue in any of our previous discussions when we approved the first phase of the Almond Grove reconstruction. And I would just like to know a little bit more about this and if this can be done at a later meeting when we get more information on the subject.
I would say that it should be approved with this meeting. It is part of what we need to do to start the construction. It will delay the construction if we don't have this in place. It does take a while for us to get an agreement in place. It is a requirement of the specifications, and it is, you know, as I said, something we do on every project, every capital project we have out there.
Okay. Do I have a Vice Mayor?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any questions or comments? I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously, 5-0.
Okay, I'm going to try a third motion, which is going to be more controversial, which has to do with number 3. So the gist of the motion is that we approve what's being called a budget adjustment set aside, and to consider whatever dollars are set aside, given the outcome of this motion, at our budget setting session to use for capital improvements throughout the town, which could include drainage. So my motion would be to set aside the $3.3 million savings that's anticipated by not doing the additive alternatives, Bayview, Bean, and Nicholson, that we decided not to do back in February. My reasons for saying that, or including that as part of my motion, are the same as they were in February. It seems like out of proportion expense for a tiny area, keeping in mind that the Almond Grove is 3% of the total streets of the town, and that we're talking about 160 feet of 3% at a budget of $400,000. It does not seem to me to be a reasonable use of the town's funds for that, when it could be set aside as part of a capital improvement, potentially funds for use throughout the town. And if it makes sense to do that drainage at a cheaper cost, then the council should have that information before it goes ahead and approves something for $400,000, particularly when we have items on our agenda tonight where we're giving away grants that are budgeted at $109,000. We have requests for $178,000 to now then pave a street 160 feet for $400,000 doesn't seem like a responsible decision. So my motion is to not add the alternatives, to set aside that $3.3 million and consider any improvements for streets throughout the town, including possible drainage fix on Bayview for our budget session.
Okay, I'll second the motion for the reasons also stated. Any comments or questions? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I have a question. So can we not add the sidewalk, that the area that doesn't have a sidewalk? Does it require us to add a sidewalk there? If we don't add a sidewalk, it seems like we also don't have to add a curb ramp, which could save money.
It's a lump sum bid, so all of the improvements that were shown between Pennsylvania and Main Street would be included. So it can't be separated out.
Okay, so let me ask a second question. So if we approve this motion, there's nothing stopping us from coming back later and creating a bid to work on this area to fix the drainage problems, which may end up being redoing the sidewalk that's there now. I think you said you're lowering the street, so the sidewalk that's coming in is going to match up with the sidewalk that's not going to be part of the bid. Is that correct?
Yeah, so ultimately we could come in and, as I mentioned, we could have a negotiated cost with the contractor to look at the drainage issues out there and fix the drainage problem. And if that's something that council would desire us to do, then we could certainly do it with this project.
If I could kind of follow up, selling myself maybe on the motion a little bit. So we could come back at a later date and add this whole option on also, right? Because Bayview may not be done this year. So next year, if they get to, let's say they're going to do Tate this year and maybe part of Glen Ridge. So then next year, I think we would end up doing Bayview. Could we add this option back in at that time if after we've explored? I think what the council really wants to see, can you fix the problems and how much do they cost without going to this full $400,000? If you come back and say it's going to cost me $200,000 more, maybe it's almost worth doing it, for example. So I feel like we want to delay it till we explore other less costly options.
So the bid is good for 60 days, and that's the amount of time that we have to make a determination on what we are going to award. Ultimately, if council did want us to after they awarded the base bid, go back to the contractor and negotiate with them for a cost to fix the drainage problem and come back to council and let council know what that cost is, we could certainly do that.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I may, another option is that we could disconnect the drainage issue from the Almond Grove Street project, and that could become a separate CIP project. And then we would have to do plans and specs accordingly to resolve the drainage issue. So we would have another ability to look at the scope. We've got the earlier specs for Bayview, so we could see what it would cost to do a little bit more design work and then bring back a separate project.
Okay. And before I move to recognize Councilmember Jensen as the seconder, I think that was what the intent of the motion was. Okay.
As the maker of the motion, Ms. Pravetti, that was precisely the intent of the motion, that we have the information required and that we do that budget set aside, and that if the council determines that wants to include drainage as part of any kind of future CIP project, it could then do so.
Any further questions on the motion? Councilmember Leonardis?
Thank you, Mayor Sayoc. I just think that we have an opportunity to take care of things all at once. It's $380,000. Was pleasantly surprised that the bid came in at $6.9 million, which is about $3 million under our original budget. Grateful for that. So I think if we start looking at addressing this as a separate CIP project, start digging away at the street, we might find that it could cost a lot more money. So we have a chance to take care of this now at potentially a lesser amount of money. In addition, it finishes out the street of Bayview nicely. It adds sidewalk the way it's written up. It fixes a drainage problem. It fixes a curb height that's too low. And it also brings a better appearance to the street. When you have 3/4 of a street in one material and then it just stops and then it's a different material, it looks like you were tiling your kitchen counter and you ran out of tile, and then you went to Home Depot and you bought a different kind of tile, and then you tiled the rest of your counter. So for appearance purposes, I think it's a good idea. I don't think $380,000 is a significant amount of money. It is 160 lineal feet. But I don't think it's a significant amount of money looking at the total scope of the project and the potential unknowns with the drainage as well as the flooding problems. So I would be inclined to support an idea of including that as part of this project now and not having to revisit it later, or it may never potentially be revisited.
Any further comments? Councilmember Spector?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When Mr. Leonardis made comments similar to that when this was before us, I agreed with it then, and I agree with it now with even more reasons. At that time, I wanted the aesthetics and the strength of concrete to finish up that area of Bayview. But even more so, this evening, I want to give certainty to the individuals who live in that area that we will be moving forward and taking care of not only their pavement, but taking care of their flooding problems. I do not want this to wait until we have our budget meeting, at which time we may or may not address their issues. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Sack. I've struggled with this last time also. It is a lot of money, and I've gone back and I've looked at the street a couple times before. I really thought I've walked by and I've seen the sandbags out there, but I never really thought about the flooding portion of it. And when I look at the street, it really feels to me like the overlay is failing as a solution in this particular area. We've done overlays other places, but the street looks messy, so I'm tempted to go ahead and add this portion of the project in and not support this motion.
Councilmember Leonardis?
I'd like to further comment, originally it was concrete and now it's covered with asphalt, and that was kind of a quick fix at one point, and I'd like to see it go back to its original look. I was kind of disappointed that the last part of Glen Ridge wasn't also included in this project. I know the pavement quality has an overlay there and it was good, but we're going to be doing most of Glen Ridge in concrete and we're leaving that last part unfinished. Had I known these numbers were going to come in so favorable, I would have probably insisted at an earlier time that that was included. I went and looked at the 3 areas today in the second alternative. I looked at the Cat's Hill, I looked at the part at the end of Bean, which seems to be part of an HOA complex, which didn't make any sense. And I looked at this portion of Bayview again, and trying to make a compromise here. I was tempted to recommend, hey, we should just do the Cat's Hill again because it will be, Nicholson will be concrete, it'll go to asphalt, and then it'll go back to Glen Ridge, and that's concrete. So it seems like that should be concrete as well. But I really think with the drainage issues and the way Bayview was originally, and this could be causing a more expensive problem later if we don't address it now. I think it just makes perfect sense to spend this money. We have it. Let's just get it over with so we don't have to revisit it.
Any further comments? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
No.
Aye.
No.
Opposed?
Sorry. No.
No.
Okay. So the motion fails. 2-3. I got it. And so now I look to the council members for an alternative motion. Senioritis.
Thank you, Mayor Sayoc. I move that we approve with the portion of the program that includes redoing the end of Bayview.
Second.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Jensen.
I will not be supporting the motion for the same reasons that I made the alternative motion. We are responsible for the infrastructure for the entire town, not just for a single neighborhood or area. And it is our job to use our money wisely to make sure that the entire town is taken care of. I respect those homeowners on Bayview, but it's 160 feet for $400,000. And there are other areas of the town that have other issues. And I cannot support digging up a pavement quality condition index 74th Street where throughout the town we are at a 66. So spending $400,000 to dig up a street that's in better condition than the rest of our streets, to me, does not make sense.
Any further comments? Vice Mayor?
I think mine's a clarifying question for staff. So Mr. Leonardis made a kind of a simple motion, but the item that you're asking here includes what is the budget number and what is the excess that's going to be moved off. So do you assume his motion includes these numbers adjusted for the 437 that included the 15% contingency to add to this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to confirm with Councilmember Leonardis that that is your intent. We're looking at item C and adding the additive of Bayview.
That is correct, yes.
As in the seconder, is that your understanding as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And
so
Madam
I will
Mayor, excuse me,
Yes.
and then what that means then is there will be roughly $2.9 million that would be available for future budget discussions.
Correct, and that would, and just to clarify, that would be at our budget meeting in May.
Correct.
For further discussion. Okay. So I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay. So this motion passes 3-2 with council members Jensen and Sayoko opposing. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Peterson. This was a big endeavor, and thank you for walking us through it. So. Okay, we now move to item number 12, which is 91 and 101 West Main Street. This is a conditional use permit application U-16-008, APN 529-01025. Welcome, Mr. Hill.
Thank you. Levi Hill, Associate Planner. Good evening, Mayor and council members. The project in front of you tonight is the proposal from the Los Gatos Coffee Roasting Company, requesting approval of a modification to their existing conditional use permit at 91 through 101 West Main Street. Specifically, the applicant is requesting to modify the existing conditions of approval to allow on-site beer and wine service, as well as off-site beer and wine sales in compliance with the town's alcohol beverage policy. The applicant is also requesting to modify existing conditions of approval to allow live entertainment before 10 o'clock p.m. and to allow hours of operation from 6 o'clock a.m. to 11 o'clock p.m. 7 days a week. The Planning Commission considered the application on March 8th and forwarded a recommendation of approval to the Town Council subject to conditions of approval, which have been included in Attachment 1 in your packet. Written comments regarding the request were submitted to staff and have been included in Attachment 6. Staff recommends that the Town Council accept the Planning Commission's recommendation and adopt the resolution contained in Attachment 3 with the conditions of approval provided in Exhibit A. This completes staff's presentation. However, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, council members? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and begin our public hearing. Ms. Hope, as the applicant, you have 10 minutes, maximum of 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm Terry Hope, and I live at 212 Bella Vista, Los Gatos, and I own and operate Los Gatos Coffee Roasting Company since 1982. I'm requesting this CUP modification to eliminate the conditions that are currently imposed on my business, which restrict entertainment. I'm also asking to amend my hours of operation and add the service of beer and wine to my conditional use permit. My plan is to offer traditional coffee house style entertainment such as live jazz, acoustic, folk, bluegrass music, as well as poetry readings and open mic nights. The performances will allow the business to provide an attraction for evening clientele and allow my business to be on par with other establishments that are offering a venue for light entertainment under the town's new entertainment ordinance. In conjunction with this application, I'm also requesting the addition of a Type 20 and Type 41 beer and wine license with the intention of serving locally produced boutique wines and craft beers with meals in my cafe and for retail sales of beer and wine for take-home. I'm also requesting the addition of a designated tasting area for a measured pour wine tasting and wine appreciation activities. I'm requesting these changes so that my business can remain competitive in an evolving marketplace by adding contemporary products and services which meet the high expectations of today's sophisticated clientele. Expanding the beverage options to include beer and wine will allow for a more desirable evening dining experience for my customers and complement the entertainment and add a new venue or new revenue to support my ever-growing overhead of my business. I believe my bistro-style menu and my casual, unpretentious coffee house environment will add a unique and affordable blend of services which will enhance the offerings in our overall downtown business district. I have thoroughly canvassed my neighborhood with information about my proposal. I've held special meeting with my neighbors, and I've communicated with the business in my vicinity, to which I've had a very enthusiastic response. And as you know, I have received a unanimous recommendation for approval from the Planning Commission. So in conclusion, I hope that you will do the same tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor and then Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Mayor Sack. Ms. Hope, just to be clear, so you're requesting and Planning Commission agreed for beer and wine and music until 10, but your store can stay open until 11, and this is all days of the week, correct?
I'm requesting it for 7 days a week, so I never have to come back and ask you again to change my hours. Entertainment and beer and wine service would end at 10 p.m., but we still need a wrap-up time to have customers exit and for our cleanup and such. So we're asking for 11 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Spector? Jensen?
Ms. Hope, Can you tell me, well, the Planning Commission recommended one of the conditions being that you cannot serve wine and beer outside.
Correct.
Where's your outdoor seating, and what is your understanding of the rationale for that? And wouldn't you want to serve it outside?
I do not want to serve alcohol outside. That's not consistent with the ABC policies. My front door ends my service space. We do have the benefit of sidewalk benches that belong to the town and also a ledge seating in front of my windows, but that's not included in where we would be serving it. Everything would be inside, and nothing would be leaving the doors, the front doors of the building or the back doors for that matter.
Okay, thanks, because I didn't understand that the outdoor referred to where everybody sits. Okay, outside on the sidewalk.
That's really a
That's what you're
public
talking about.
area.
Yeah,
and
okay.
They may take coffee
That's
out
really
there, but not alcohol.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? Okay. Well, this is a public hearing. I don't have any further speaker cards. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and close the public testimony.
Thank you.
Okay. And council members, any disclosures that you would like to share, that you need to share before we go into questions and or comments and or a motion? Okay. Councilmember Leonardis.
I'll go make a motion to approve the recommendation in the staff report as found in attachment 3.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember Johnson.
I'll second that with the understanding that the condition with respect to the outdoor service refers to basically that sidewalk area. Would make sense not to have it out there, but if in the future there's an outdoor area designated in your business, I would think that you would come back.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Okay, so I'll call the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? It passes unanimously. Congratulations. So we are now at item number 13, which is to receive and approve the fiscal year 2017-18 community grants and the funding recommendations attached in our staff report. So, okay. Welcome, Ms. Hammock.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Shalane Hammock, and I'm a management analyst in the town manager's office. I'm here to talk to you about the community grants. The town of Los Gatos offers 2 community grant programs: the Arts, Cultural, and Educational Program, which funding allocations are reviewed by the Arts and Culture Commission Subcommittee, and the Human Services Program, which is reviewed by the Community and Senior Services Subcommittee and Commission. Both commissions did fantastic work, spending many hours carefully reviewing and discussing each of the applications. For fiscal year 2016-17, the town distributed a total of $119,800 for the community grant program. $19,800 was for the Arts, Cultural, and Educational Program, and $100,000 was for the Human Services Program, as council approved an additional one-time allocation of $10,000 for West Valley Community Services. For the 2017-18 community grant program, staff indicated to the subcommittees and the commissions that the funding availability is $19,800 for the Arts, Cultural, and Educational Program and $90,000 for the Human Services Program as based on the previous year's budget. Over the last few months, the subcommittees and commissions have met and developed their funding recommendations for council, which can be seen in the staff report attachments. The Arts, Cultural, and Educational funding recommendation totals $19,800, and the Human Services recommendation totals $100,000. Once again, the Community and Senior Services Commission is asking for an additional $10,000 for the Human Services Program due to an increased demand and unmet needs. Attachment 5 shows the recommendation for funding allocation for $100,000, and Attachment 6 shows the funding recommendations for the original base of $90,000 if the additional $10,000 is not approved. If council agrees with the commission's recommendation for the additional $10,000 for the Human Services Program, staff would like to understand if this is a single-year allocation or if this is to be an expected base amount. Given the 5-year forecast, the town may not be able to sustain this increase. Overall, staff is asking council to approve the community grants funding allocations for fiscal year 2017-18 and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Council members, any questions? Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Sack. So the Human Services is recommending $100,000 total, and our last year was $90,000, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And how many years have we been at $90,000?
We have, let's see, we've been at 90,000, 2015-16, 98, about 98,000, 2014-15, and then 82,000, 2013-14. So it's really varied year to year, but
Okay.
about that same range.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, so I will open it up for public testimony. We have several speaker cards, and so I'll just call you up one at a time. Just a reminder for those that are here for the first time, you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and if you could just identify yourself. First speaker, Jordan Dancer with Nextdoor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jordan Dancer, and I'm with Nextdoor Solutions to Domestic Violence. I don't want to be confused with the neighborhood social site. They stole our name. Anyway, I want to thank the Mayor and the Council and the Commissioners also for their consideration of our request. Even though our award is somewhat lower than it has been in previous years, I do want to thank you for this support. Domestic violence is an increasing public health issue. And while we have for a long time said 1 in 4 women will experience abuse, the numbers are beginning now to show 1 in 3. So we think that a lot of that has to do with that there is more reporting, and there also is a growing in the number of men who are stepping forward as being victims of abuse. We also have concerns about other funding that is going to be impacted through HUD, which is CDBG, and also through the possible elimination of the Office on Violence Against Women, which is out of the Federal Department of Justice. So anything that you can contribute to help your residents be able to have access to services such as emergency shelter and a hotline that's been the same number for 46 years now, or to come in for self-sufficiency program services or walk-in crisis counseling, legal advocacy, or support group. We have one here in the town of Los Gatos at St. Mary's Church over on Bean Street. So any support that you can give us is truly appreciated. Of course, I would like as much money as you possibly can give me. But any support is not only for your citizen, but also in ensuring that the services that they might need are there and available for them. Thank you.
Just, it looks like you have several questions. I'll start with Council Member Spector and then Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With regard to Nextdoor Solutions to Domestic Violence.
Yes.
What is, and I know it's in our staff report, but I don't remember what it was. What is your total annual budget?
Our total annual budget for all our programs and services is $2.5 million.
And is any portion of that 2.5 million federal funding?
Yes.
And how much?
Federal funding is not as much. Our state funding is much more. I was just looking at our numbers today. I want to say about 1.3 is through state funding, mostly out of the California Office of Emergency Services. Our next largest funder is through the County of Santa Clara, and our third largest government funder is through the federal government. And most of that is, we get about $27,000 through the county's Continuum of Care HUD funding that helps support 5 units of housing at our home safe permitted housing residential sites that pays for transitional support services through case management. And then there's some other.
Thank you. You actually answered my question earlier in that. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Most of my question actually you just answered. And I don't have the budget in front of me, but I recall a small part directly from the federal government, and then a big piece from the state, and I thought there was a pretty big piece from the county, but some of what's coming through the county actually is coming through from the federal government to the county. But all of the piece in the county is not from the federal government, is it? What
no.
piece of that? So let's say the current administration got rid of all of your federal funding. How much does that really affect? Some of the, the direct and some of the county, but how much of the county?
I don't know that I know the answer of that, because we look at VOCA funding that comes down from the federals, which comes to us through the California Office of Emergency Services. So it could be quite a large, significant amount of money when we look at VOCA funds. And I don't have that answer, but if you like, I can research it tomorrow and come back to you with that. But it would be significant.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I have a process question for you. Understanding the staff report and I guess the lens with which the Community Senior Services Commission was looking at their allocation, they were looking at alternate sources and how much Los Gatos really contributes to that.
Right.
So I am concerned about this potential decrease in funding through CDBG. In the application that you provided, in the budget allocation that you had, was it with the projections that you're assuming, or was it with the projections
It was
based on a
projections,
worst-case
I
scenario?
think, based before the November elections.
Okay.
So-
So, and again, you mentioned that about 1.3 comes from the state?
Yes.
And when you say from the state, is that, I'm looking to you, but it could come from others, is that the CDBG funding that we're also concerned we're going to
Through
lose?
the California Office of Emergency Services, we have a legal advocacy, I wish I could speak, legal advocacy grant. We have one that is specific that covers just about any type of services that might be received through a domestic violence agency. So it could be assistance with shelter and helping people find housing, self-sufficiency programs, any of the programs and services that we do is through that. There are other fundings that do support a broad kind of sense. We just recently, we were one of 4 agencies selected to do a Housing First project specifically for victims of domestic violence. So that is new in our budget this year. So it's about $200,000 from that, which also comes down from the federal level.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next speaker, Tom Picrow.
Hello, Mayor, councilors. I'm Tom Picrow, Chair of the Community and Senior Services Commission. I'm speaking on their behalf. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the generous support you provide over the past years for the Human Services Grant Program. This is on behalf of the Commission, on behalf of the townspeople and the service providers. Next, I'd like to respectfully say that we have a different view on the Commission from what the staff report was given to you, and that is regarding just the $100,000 versus $90,000 request for the total budget. For some time, and then a year ago at your budget meetings, we had requested an increase from $10,000 increase in general for the budget. I used this graphic at that time, which showed the growth in our senior population. It showed the budget levels that were actually expended for about the last 8 years by the town on the Human Grants Program, and what the value in terms of a CPI index. At that time, there was discussion. We also suggested tying to the CPI. At that time, there was discussion. Our understanding of the council discussion and then a vote for what to apply was that you agreed with the $100,000 budget as being a good level for our town grants program. Obviously, the town administration understood that differently as a single time increase. I would say that that $10,000 we use to solve a case management or the lack thereof in town, and that has been extremely successful with West Valley Community Services bringing care management or case management into town. And so the budget which the commission supports is what is number 5 in your attachment, which is for a total of $100,000. Third, I'd like to just point out very quickly a couple of changes that you'll notice right away in that budget. The philosophy behind those changes are, one, we wanted to partner with the Los Gatos Saratoga Recreation Organization to take advantage of that resource and try and do some things we hadn't been able to do and wanted to for some time. And second, we wanted to put greater focus, emphasis on things, services primarily within the town. And so you'll see we did add 2 programs, one for the Clubhouse program, which is scholarship for after-school children for working parents. The second one is to add a grief support program. And we dropped 2, which are the Y and United Way.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Picrow. Any questions? Yes, Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Couple just general questions. There are issues that you've heard about the federal government reducing or potentially reducing funding to some of these agencies. Do you have any information as to which of the agencies on your list might lose federal funding? Or let's say not lose, utilize federal funding?
Well, it's a complicated issue. I was personally concerned about Next Door Solutions as one, and we increased it slightly, but it's still well below what I would like. There are others, for example, Live Oak Senior Nutrition. It comes from the county, but the county money is coming from the federal money. So it's very hard for us to put a number on just how it's going, who's going to be hurt the most. Those are 2 which we particularly, I would particularly call out. And then West Valley Community Services gets substantial funds from the county, I believe. And as you know, the county budgets are now somewhat in question depending on what happens in Washington.
Then the second question, I have personally been supportive of CASI, Counseling and Support Services for Youth, in part because of the services it provides for our students, and in part because of the reason that it was created. But I see that your commission is recommending a reduction there. Can you tell me why that was? Because it was a reduction from
5,000.
From, yes. Was it $5,000 reduction?
From last year, yes, that's right, from 15 to 10. I would first say these are hard decisions. They're not fun ones or easy ones. And what you may divine from looking at the budget somewhat is a reduction in some budgets to try and make available these 2 new items at the top, and one of them is for children, for school children, where to be able to provide scholarships, and these are considered important programs that keep children at risk from in a good environment. And so perhaps there was some balance there. I don't say it's adequate, but we understand the valuable service CASI does in terms of counseling.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Picrow. Next speaker, Mary, you're going to have to help me out here. Goulart, right? Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and all. First of all, I would just like to start with thanking you and the town for the years of supporting our senior nutrition program. It is such a vital program that we provide for our seniors here in town. We have been providing this service to the seniors of this community and surrounding communities for almost 42 years now. And we just feel like it is a key program that is provided. We not only nourish the bodies of our seniors, but also their spirits. We are a safety net for them and bring joy and safety and friendship and socialization and better health to them. This last year, and now that I'm settling into my new position, I'm starting other programs. We offer free fitness programs. It's kind of, we call it gentle chair yoga, twice a week on Mondays and Fridays. And much to my delight, it is pulling in more people, and they are really feeling the difference of having that extra involvement. And we're hoping to continue to expand our programs, mostly during the morning because we have that space available. So I just am very, very grateful for the continued support. We are doing a lot of outreach lately, communicating with the hospitals and different organizations that provide services to seniors, because we really want to make sure that we get our name out there. Our population shifts quite a bit. People age out, they pass away, move away, end up losing their independence. So we're constantly out there reintroducing ourselves. And I didn't realize how important that is, because I kind of assumed if it had been around this long that people wouldn't forget that we're here. So we're really busy doing that and expanding our outreach to everybody. So I just want to say thank you, and we look forward to networking and partnering with all of the agencies in town that provide these services. And I'm very excited about also the age-friendly initiative. And I feel like this town is really moving forward in terms of their support for our seniors. And it's not just the seniors. When we re-weave seniors back into our society, it changes a lot of things, and it pulls in people of all ages. And I'm really excited about it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Michelle Abene.
Hi, I'm Michelle Abene, and I'm representing the art docents of Los Gatos. And I just wanted to thank you so much for your support with our grant request. You know, we're woven into the fabric of the community in that we teach art to the children in the schools, over 3,000 students in our district since 1973. And we have over 100 volunteers in our organization. And I just wanted to let you know that it's all comprised of volunteer members from our community, retired teachers, parents, grandparents. And they work very hard in providing things like print presentations, workshops, guest artist presentations, and our soon upcoming annual student art show. So we're also working very hard on incorporating STEAM into the art curriculum for the students. So we're doing digital art. We're also incorporating science into the art appreciation curriculum. And we're just manning thousands of volunteer hours, and it wouldn't be possible if it were not for the support of Los Gatos. So we thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Next speaker, Mark Fishler.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for allowing me the opportunity to speak about my organization, Parents Helping Parents. My name is Mark Fishler, and I'm the new development director and the uncle of a special needs niece. We thank you because we've had almost 15-year partnership over the years. I think last year was the first year that we did not receive funding from the town of Los Gatos, and so we're excited to be up here again. Not quite the amount we had asked for was what was recommended, but I know how many worthy agencies are up here asking for money. PHP's been building bright futures for children with special needs for over 40 years now. We were started by two moms in their kitchen who realized that they needed to support one another. And each day parents arrive looking for help at PHP, and they leave with support and information they need to take the next step in their journey. We place a special emphasis on services to underserved populations, including those of racial and cultural minority groups, low-income categories, and those who have limited English proficiency or disabilities themselves. We offer services in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. Our mission is helping persons with disabilities. Almost every one of our staff members and volunteers understand families of children of special needs. I'm one of the few people that work there that actually is not a parent of a child with special needs. I happen to be an uncle of a child with special needs. some of our staff members have disabilities themselves, but I think the point is that our staff is uniquely qualified as they bring years of personal experience helping these families. I think it's interesting to note of the 128 Los Gatos children we've helped over the last year, that represents almost a quarter of the special needs children that are enrolled in Los Gatos schools. And we typically are helping these families multiple times, so we're really touching these families, you know, in excess of probably 400 times a year. And so we anticipate being able to continue helping families as we move through the 17-18 fiscal year. And we're proposing, we think, because of just the sheer growth of, as more children are identified with things like autism, that we think we can help more like 140 children in the next year. So again, I appreciate any consideration you can give us. Any funding that we can get from you would be greatly appreciated, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mayor. So I see that you requested 2,000 and you only got 1,000. So
Right.
1,000 sounds like a very small number to me, actually. But since sort of the numbers are small, I'm assuming you kind of have a large leverage with, what does $1,000 mean to you? What do you use the funds for? How much more does, you know, if we brought it from 1,000 to 2,000, what does that really do for you?
And I appreciate the question. You know, it's interesting. I just started in this job a couple of months ago. This is one of the first applications I filled out, and I found myself wondering why we didn't even apply for more than $2,000. But it does represent a small portion of our budget, as you can see from the application. I think that it's just giving us additional funding. There was a question earlier about how much these agencies receive from federal funding, and we do get about a quarter of our money from the Department of Education. We get another 20% from state funding. So we do have some funding sources from the feds and the state governments as well, and from the county, get about 10% there. An additional $1,000 just helps us serve more families and allows us to add more hours for the staff. And again, since we are supporting 140 families in Los Gatos alone, every little bit will help.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Fishler.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'm really going to need some help. Sujatha Venkatraman?
Thank you, Mayor Sayok. Thank you, Council Member. Thank you, Senior Services Commission, for the recommendation. My name is Sujatha Venkatraman. I'm the Associate Executive Director with West Valley Community Services. West Valley Community Services has been receiving support from the town for a long time, and we provide basic needs services to the low-income families living in town of Los Gatos. As you know, the cost of living is increasing and is affecting families and seniors more. And the basic needs services is what keeps the support going. And we've seen an increase in a number of clients coming and asking for financial assistance and food services. In the past, we've worked with a lot of partners in town of Los Gatos, and I'm happy to announce that with our mobile food pantry, our presence in Los Gatos has been now more, and the footprint that we have is improved. And for the last 6 months, we've been trying to find a location for the RV, and I'm happy to announce that Los Gatos Methodist Church has agreed to host the RV, and I'm working on a memorandum of understanding with them. So we're very excited to be in Los Gatos. We're working out on a Thursday schedule, the first, third, and the fifth Thursdays, and we will be providing services for the homeless folks who come for showers at the town, and we'll be working with Mary very closely, as those are the service points that other clients also get other services. So thank you again for the support. I just want to give a little bit of a background about your questions about funding. The funding is at risk for all of us, but I just want to put in perspective, for West Valley Community Services, direct federal funding that we get from HUD is for one program is $700,000, and it's for our rapid rehousing program. The rest of our funding that is from the county and from other cities is general fund, trickle down CDBG, so there is some link. The county of Santa Clara had filed a lawsuit against the executive order 2 weeks ago, if you had asked me, there was a lot of uncertainty. I'm happy to say that West Valley supported the amicus brief, and the town came back with the county came back with a hearing that was very positive. So we are moving through with our budget cycle. Most of our grants are getting renewed. Again, there is a lot of uncertainty, but as nonprofits, we are moving forward with the confidence. With that said, I think towns and cities that we nonprofits serve in needs to step in and help because the residents still need us. So thank you for the support.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes public testimony. So I will close that portion of our hearing and look to council to see if there's any further questions of staff, any comments, and eventually a motion. Yes, Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. I'm going to start with the arts, cultural, and educational grants and move to approve the $19,800 recommended grants as noted by the Arts and Cultural Commission.
Second.
Okay, any comments or questions? Okay, I'm sorry, did you raise your hand, Ms. Preve? Okay. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So that does pass unanimously. Okay. Would you like to make a second motion, or was that just for that?
That was just for that.
Okay. Council members, would anyone like to make a second motion? Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Sack. So, you know, when I looked at this, I saw the ones that were being decreased. I particularly was, concerned about the domestic violence decrease, and I thought carefully about it, and we are a small percentage of it, and I think we could move funds around and play with this, but at the end of the day, I think that our Community Services Commission has really thought long and hard about this. So I just don't want to play with it, I think. So I will make the motion to go with their recommendations for the total to $100,000.
Okay, so you're looking at attachment 5 then, with the total of $100,000.
Yes.
Okay. Would anyone like to make any motion? Would anyone like to second? Okay, I'll go ahead and second the motion. A couple of comments, though, to that. One is, and I'll ask the maker of the motion, I would like to clarify that this isn't a base amount that we should be expecting for future years. Looking at the 5-year forecast, I understand that setting a minimum, even if it's an additional $10,000, may pose a future hardship, and I'd like to have a little bit more flexibility on a year-to-year basis.
So you're...
So if because I know that was one of the issues that staff had clarified, if we go to $100,000, would that be a one-time, or should that be built into future funding?
So we'll call it a one-time.
Okay. Okay. Any further? Yes, Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to support the motion primarily for the reason that Mr. Rennie noted. If I were going to be the Cultural Commission or the Arts Commission making these recommendations, or I might think differently. I do have concerns because of the importance to me and to the community of some of the organizations whose funds were decreased, like Cassie. I have concerns about federal government defunding, either directly or indirectly through the county. That has not happened as of this juncture. I'm hoping that next year, when we are looking at this again, we won't be worrying about that issue. But if it is an issue, I would ask the commissions and the staff to provide us council with information on that subject matter, so I can roll it into my decision making. So having said all of that, and for those reasons, I will be supporting the motion.
Any further comments or questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously, 5-0. Okay. Okay, so we have one item remaining, item 14, and that's our Arts and Culture Commission strategic plan. But I do ask that we take a quick 5-minute break before we move to the last item. Okay, thank you for that quick break. We now are at item 14, the Arts and Culture Commission Strategic Planning Process Update.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This evening, I'll speak to you on the Arts and Culture Strategic Plan. Since August 2015, the Arts and Culture Commission has been dedicated to working on a strategic plan. The Commission came to Council in January 2016 to provide an update on the strategic plan process. Since then, the Commission has narrowed down the strategic plan to 3 main goals, and from those goals, they have focused in on a specific project and a revenue option. Maureen Kaplan-Javi, Chair of the Arts and Culture Commission, is here to speak. And I'm also here to answer any questions.
Looks like I know how to clear a room. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm Maureen Kaplan-Javi, the chair of the Art and Culture Commission. And we have been before you before to present our goals. I won't go over them again. I thought I would just dive right into the specific public art program that we'd like you to consider funding. And that is a gateway project. I'm going to call a gateway project. Simply, what we are proposing is a series of art-forward, demarcating signs or objects installed in various entry points or gateways to the town that serve to welcome visitors and residents. Gateway projects aren't anything new. It's not something we've invented. It's a popular approach taken by many municipalities, small and large, all around the country, as a way to mark or identify entryways into their boundaries, some more art-forward than others. Ideally, our approach, again, as being one that's very focused around a public art initiative, is to make ours, a very kind of innovative, creative, well-executed, and meaningful to the town in terms of its rich history, residents, past and present. It's a project that we also believe we can invite participation with the rest of the town. It was one thing for the Art Commission to propose it, but there's a great opportunity for the residents of the town to get involved and weigh in on the project, to get buy-in, which we think is important as well. One very obvious way to invite participation is to invite folks to suggest marker icons. So I'm trying to, I was wondering if I could just throw up this. So this is just a little bit of homework we did, the commission.
Kaplan, if you could bring the mic with you.
Sorry. This is a little preliminary map that we did to show you that we identified 11 gateway entry points into the town from north, south, east, and west. These are all potential sites to install these markers, or I don't want to call them signs, and we haven't determined yet what they are. But we can start with one on north, south, east, and west. We can choose whatever we want. We can invite input on that. We still would have to go and work with the town and probably the parks folks and others to determine what are the best locations and why and what's public land and private land. But here are 11 gateways to the town that we were considering for this project. What we also wanted to do was, rather than just put up a sign that says, "Welcome to Los Gatos," we wanted to be able to incorporate some of the iconic images or ideas of what folks have when they think of the town. So imagine the obvious is cats and mountain lions, but railroads, orchards, hills, trees, technology, marks like Forbes Mill, the actual person, Mountain Charlie, Victorian architecture, John Steinbeck. So these are all images and icons that can be included or incorporated into these designs at these various gateway locations. So let me just take this down. And just to further, we have been conducting a survey with residents, an art and culture survey, asking folks what they like about the art offerings and cultural offerings in the town, what they'd like to see more of. And this, I thought, was one great result of that survey, which is actually started in January and it's going to go on through April. It's on the town website, and we have been to farmers markets and talking to people. We're going to probably be at Spring on the Green, and folks are invited to go to the website and take the survey. But one of the questions was, do you think it's important to strengthen the artistic image in Los Gatos? And 80% of respondents agreed. So there is some will there and some excitement to be able to maybe do a little bit more in terms of public art. In terms of funding, this is the second, one of our first goals was start to develop a public art program or some projects to recommend them. The second is funding, offer some funding mechanisms to be able to support this kind of initiative. Well, we would like to use the $25,000, which was allocated or perhaps allocated in public art funds from the town to solicit design submissions and ultimately install at least one of the gateway markers by, I would think, this time next year. And we're recommending that this, if the $25,000 from the town comes as seed funding for this project, it can then be further funded ongoing through a private development fee, and that can be commercial and or residential fee that's based on a percentage of construction costs. And again, this kind of funding model isn't new. Lots of different municipalities have this kind of funding structure in place. For instance, in Palo Alto, any new construction above 10,000 square feet or more than 5 units is required to include art, a value of 1% of the construction cost, or pay 1% fee to the city. In Los Altos, any development over $1 million is required to include art of value of 1% of the construction cost, or pay 1% fee to the city for public art. In Walnut Creek, any development above 25,000 square feet, there's 1% dedicated to the funding of public art. And in San Francisco, just for an example, they have a public art trust. Now I know San Francisco is in Los Gatos, but you can factor the scale in however you like. The San Francisco Public Art Trust, which was enacted into law in 2012, all private developers in the downtown core are required to put 1% of construction cost towards public art. And in the cases where developers don't want to actually install public art on their premises or on the buildings that they're building, the Public Art Trust allows them to place it in a designated location off-site. So the Art Commission and the Public Art Trust will help those developers decide where to place a piece of public art if they don't want to do it, through their own initiative. And there's actually a pretty exciting public art initiative on the books right now for San Francisco that is kind of taking advantage of this Public Art Trust. So those are the ideas. It's a gateway project to start using the $25,000 as a seed fund to get at least the first installation on the ground, and then in tandem asking the town to consider investigating the developer fee funding model. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Actually, I do have, again, a process question. So assuming $25,000 is awarded for this gateway, how would the process work? Would then the commission start actually developing some ideas of the various milestones? Walk me through at least what the commission is thinking, how they would proceed if you got a green light to move ahead.
Well, so this is a concept idea at this point. I think, as far as I'm concerned, the next steps would be to further investigate the 11 gateway locations. Maybe there are less, maybe there are more. We have to see what's really feasible. When we talk about installing something, is it a good location? Maybe something's close to a freeway and it's not going to really work. So we would start to look at those locations and involve other town departments who I assume would have to help us make those determinations as well. At the same time, the commission would start to take this idea of a gateway project and really start to discuss specifically what we're looking for, the direction that we would put out in an RFP to artists or designers. So it's one thing to say, well, just put some things at these various corners. It's what and how will that be determined? And so we will have to have that discussion. I think that the idea of deciding on specific icons that we could then maybe go out into the public realm and say, here are the 10, if you're going to look at 10 objects or 10 icons from the town, here are 10 that we're considering for these gateway projects. What do you all think? And get some buy-in, or maybe there's better ideas. So we would be doing that. Then it's also investigating, you know, the kind of artists or designers that we would really need to invite to submit. It's not just any artist. It would probably have to be the combination of some kind of design and probably architectural or construction, maybe even a group that would have to kind of bid on this type of thing. So we start to investigate those ideas. And then hopefully put it out to bid, you know, look at those bids, go back, and really, I would like at this time next year to have something installed. I mean, it's $25,000 and it's not nothing, but it's manageable enough so we're not going to be able to go crazy. We have to really be focused and be specific and maybe start small and go from there. And as, you know, commissioners, we're going to have to, you know, we have to weigh how much time we have to be able to do this, but also hopefully invite others from the community in to partner with us and help us.
Thank you. Any council member Spector?
Thank you. I do have questions for the speaker, but before that, the $25,000, is that already in the budget?
It's a placeholder from your priority setting discussion back in January. If you accept the recommendation before you tonight, you will see it in the proposed capital budget, and you'll be discussing that again in mid-May.
All right. First of all, I like the idea of focusing, prioritizing, limiting, you know, your objectives, and saying that you would hope to get it done in 1 year. I think that's good. With regard to the request for proposal, you're going to have to get the, you're going to have to figure out what you want in that RFP. What are your thoughts about bringing the RFP back to the council, or would you just like to create it and run with it?
I'm open. I would love to get as much input as possible. I think among the commission members, we're actually pretty much in sync with this, and we seem to be agreeing and coalescing our thoughts. So I'm confident that we could come and present to the council an idea that you would probably likely go, yeah, that's a good idea. I would love, you know, so your answer is, my answer is, Commission would do as much work as we can to present something to you that you can see clearly and be able to make a decision on. We'd like to come back to the council as we have throughout this last 3 years. Every step along the way where we've made some big decisions, we've come back to the council and reported, and we'd like to do that again.
To have an actual monument by 1 year from today, wouldn't you need funding additional to the $25,000?
Yes. So the idea is to use the $25,000 as a Kickstarter, as a seed funding for this project, which is multi-year. We're not going to be able. Let's say we decide, and everyone agrees. You know, there are 10 gateway locations that we really want to cover in this project. So we're going to need 10 installations. Well, 10 installations is going to take several years, probably. The development fee that can be researched, again, I would imagine through the town staff, is our recommended way to at least continue to fund this project. We're not relying on $25,000 every year from the town. We're looking outside for other funding mechanisms that can continue. Construction will continue, that percentage will continue. Perhaps there's, you know, if what we deliver after the first year is so exciting and people love it, then who knows? You might get private groups that want to come in and fund. You might want to get someone like Netflix that wants to come in and say, well, if you're going to pay tribute to Los Gatos as one of the centers of Silicon Valley, well, then we want to support that as well. So we can invite them.
Well, don't get too excited about
I know.
that.
But, there's one part that I forgot to mention that I think is important, is, you know, all of these things like cats and Victorian homes and all of these images or icons, what we would love to be able to do is ultimately combine all those elements into one capstone piece that we could install in the town somewhere. So you bring all those elements together and tell that big story through one piece, but each one is represented in each of the gateways, so it ties that all together.
I'm going to bring you back to simplicity because I like the simplicity. Why is it that you said that staff would have to research funding sources? Why does staff have to do it? Why can't members of the commission do it?
We can certainly do that. That's perhaps ignorance on my part. I don't know how this is done. We can propose these funding models, and I don't know what you would like, we're not sure what we should go ahead with doing and what the council might recommend to staff to do.
Okay.
We'll do whatever you want us to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Sack. I guess my question ultimately comes to, do you think $25,000 is enough for a gateway project? My concern a little bit is, I like the idea you want to press ahead and get something installed within a year. My concern is the time it's going to take, if it's going to cost more than $25,000, you may be thinking, oh, we'll raise some money by then, but it's going to take you a while to figure out what it is. And you're going to find, well, maybe it costs more than $25,000. Then you're going to have to go try to raise money, and it's going to be tough to get it within a year. And my concern would be that you come up with something that's maybe let's call it inadequate because you wanted to get it done in a year and you didn't have time to raise enough money for it. So the question really comes down to, is $25,000 enough to do one?
Okay, so $25,000 is just the first, or the Kickstarter, and who knows? We might be able to do it for two. It depends. So I can't say. I believe $25,000 will go a long way in this very first initial phase, and I think that's where we're going to put our big effort, is to make sure that the first phase is indicative of what you can expect to roll out for all the other phases of this, depending on how many there are. In tandem with this, what we're saying is that $25,000 isn't going to give us the gateway project that we've envisioned. The fee, the development fee, has to be seriously considered as a way to continue to fund. And that's what we're recommending, is to investigate that. Because what we can do is we can go along and say, okay, $25,000, we're going to go along, we're going to get bids. We look at this development fee, assessment fee, and if some point along the way that's not going to work, or funding isn't, the long-term funding vision isn't there, it's just not going to work, then we stop. We pull the trigger pretty late in the game in terms of saying, okay, go ahead.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to circle back to process. Let's assume that you had, the commission had the $25,000. Let's assume that your vision is monuments. Let's assume that you're starting with one monument. Do you think the $25,000 will get you to that? Or are you saying you're going to need this other funding source in order to get there?
I will need the other funding source, ongoing funding source, and this is the one we've identified, to keep the project going. So our view is that $25,000 is a great, is good seed funding, is a good kickoff funding for the first phase. And I just want to pull back on using the word monument, because that sounds monumental, and it's a marker of some kind. It can be not large and not monumental and still be very effective. It's how smart that design is. And that's where we're committed to really putting a lot of thought into it, and bringing in creative people who can help us realize that vision as well. But yes, I think $25,000 is a good start. If there's an ongoing agreement to fund it through this other source is our recommendation. Could be others if that's not something that you're comfortable with. $25,000 is a lot of money.
It is. Further questions? Okay, thank you. Okay. Council members, do you have Questions of staff? Councilmember Jensen?
Yes, it's a question for staff. I am making the assumption that a marker, monument, sign, design, whatever it might be, is going to have to go through a land use planning process, just like, for example, the Veterans Memorial, correct?
Well, we do have the public art selection policy and procedure that's contained in your packet as one of your attachments, and it involves a public process whereby the council makes the final decision regarding a proposed public installation of artwork, including the location. So whether we use a vehicle of an architecture and site or some other mechanism, you would still be the final decision maker.
Right, but and that public art policy is the same thing that was used too late with the Veterans Memorial. So the notion that the Arts Commission could go get a design, sorry to do the wet blanket, but could get a design and say, Yahoo, this is what we want, and put it somewhere without a public process into how that works or what happens, that can't happen, right?
No.
Okay.
Further Councilmember Spector?
Thank you. I'm trying to get my arms around the process, and so of staff. Let's assume that the idea of a marker monument, and I have a vision of it because I've seen it in other cities, so it isn't something that is foreign to me. But let's say the concept is okay, and let's say the $25,000 might be okay. The steps that the commission needs to take and where they would be if this council says, okay, go look at markers, think about markers and have 25,000, it's still not clear to me where the steps are going to go, and if staff could help me out with that.
So according to the public art selection policy and procedure, it'll go through a public art subcommittee, and then it'll go to the commission, and then it'll go to town council.
And it may be more specifically, I think the first is, there's been the initial identification of locations, say 11 or maybe more or less. There needs to be an evaluation of those locations. And I think I appreciate the language around a first phase, because we don't know if a first phase could consist of 2 locations, 3 locations, 1 location, et cetera. So there needs to be an evaluation of these locations. The policy gives us guidance if any of them are nearby parks or trails. We have very constrained infrastructure. As you know, our sidewalks in many places are very narrow, and we have a lot of other things going on, equipment, street poles, signals, et cetera. So we would have to understand what those parameters are and work with our Parks and Public Works Department before we could even issue an RFP. I think we would have to understand what are the physical parameters and dimensions that we would be considering. So there's a lot of upfront work that would involve other city departments as well as the commission. Once we're at a point of a draft RFP, typically a subcommittee or the commission would outline those parameters. What are we asking an artist to do? How big? What materials? Durability? What about maintenance? And I would say, based on our experience with the Veterans Memorial, that council should probably see that RFP before it's released. Once it's released, that way the council can have additional input. Once it's released, we would get the submissions back. We would go through the public process in terms of a recommendation for which artist or artists would be part of that first phase. Their concepts would come back to you for final decision. So that's one path, just based on our experience with veterans and actually using this policy. And then again, we would have it in our capital improvement project, because this would be a physical improvement, again, most likely involving either the contractor with the oversight of the town or some other town involvement to make sure that we're protecting all of the infrastructure that's in these gateway locations.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the speaker. What's step number one?
Step number one is whether or not the council endorses the notion of a public art project at gateways. I think that's the fundamental question before you tonight. Is this type of public art what you would like to see the commission focus on? Are gateway locations the place for the commission?
All right, and if the council says no, then we're stopped. And if the council says yes, then what's step number two?
Step number two is you'll see your capital improvement program include the $25,000 in a CIP. Concurrently, the commission would start working on the evaluation of the gateway locations, working with staff to determine, constraints and opportunities in those places.
Thank you.
Councilmember Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Sayoc. I have a question about the ongoing funding, because I think that if we were to consider this proposal, I think that the $25,000 probably would not be enough. And I think it would also be a good idea to have a source of ongoing funding for the arts moving forward, such as other municipalities do. So the question is, do we, or at a later meeting, get to see a breakdown of all the other municipalities? There were some mentioned by the speaker, of course, and what they charge, and again, kind of so we can thoroughly vet it with comparable communities. It's one thing to be compared to San Francisco with much larger projects, but we don't have that many large projects. So in order to put some viability behind it, to see if it actually could fit our community, I guess what would you need from us tonight to address putting together that for a future meeting item?
I think the commission has given this a lot of thought, just from my individual communications and attendance at a couple of the commission meetings. So they've come to the impact fee as one approach to create a long-term funding source. And there were certain examples tonight. Really, this is a big job, because it would involve the town attorney's office. It would involve other departments to actually do that benchmarking. But then, if the council is interested, this would actually need to become a strategic priority, because we would have to do a formal nexus study to make sure that the linkage of the fee, whether it's 1% or some percent of building valuation, has a clear nexus with public art. And many of these fees were established many years ago, so they're long-standing, but there have been other cities that have tried this more recently that have been challenged. So we would want to be careful that if we do pursue this, that we've got the right documentation as we move forward. This is not currently in our work plan.
So the question I have then is, I like the concept of the gateway, and I like the concept of identifying future funds to continue that. And like you said, it's not part of this year's priority work plan. So should it be put on to next year's and identified, and the council decide it's a priority, how would that pause work out with the commission's activity for the year?
I think it could happen. I think there's still value in pursuing a public art project, whether it's gateways or some other concept. So that way, the commission can be working on something tangible that is consistent with the goals and sub-goals that they've taken a lot of time to evaluate. I just want to make sure we're all eyes wide open around impact fees, and that it will cost money for us to conduct those studies. We can do some of the work inside, but we would need probably some outside assistance.
Right, okay. Yes, council members, I'll go down the line, starting with Council Member Spector.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What I hear staff saying is that the Art Commission has done a good job. They can go ahead along their line of thinking, but that it's going to take in fiscal year 17-18 or 18-19 before the council, before the town decides whether or not it has the funding or even wants to pursue the funding. My concern there is to have members of our community, the commission, moving ahead with work, and they might get to a point where they need funding and the town has said, we're not doing it, or we're not doing it now. And so that does give me concern.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I think 25,000 is really a nice statement for the council. And I think based on this conversation, one thing the commission may think about is in the evaluation of the 11 or so gateway locations, are there a couple of sites that are particularly important so that if, say, for whatever reason, we only were able to do 2 or 3 installations, have we chosen the highest priority gateways so that way it would still hold together intact even if we aren't able to do more in the immediate term. So that might be another approach, so that way the project would still be valid and would still be a great contribution to the town.
Let me just follow up. So are you saying the $25,000 could get a product, whether it's 1 product or 3 product, you could get a product?
I think so. You know, I that's at least, I'm not an artist, but given some of the other things that I've seen, I think it's possible. A lot of it's going to depend on, is it lit, or what are some of the other requirements that we're looking at? Does it have a water feature? Whatever.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So, I see this as 2 pieces, and the first piece I think I'm decided on. I think that Gateway project is a really good idea. I've always thought that Los Gatos was kind of lacking. Not even sure we have a welcome to Los Gatos anywhere other than maybe the green sign with our population on it. So that in some ways that's maybe a little embarrassing that we don't, a town as special as ours, we don't have anything. So I definitely would be in favor of giving them $25,000 to move ahead with that. Locations, certainly the edge of town, but I would think first I would want to do downtown. That's, the gateways to, at least one of the gateways to downtown, because that, to me that's where most places, they start with their downtown. Again, we don't even have a sign at our downtown that says Los Gatos downtown. So my concern again with, to me, and I could be wrong, could be somewhere else, but the gateway to downtown is really Santa Cruz and Route 9. Maybe you'd want to call it further up Winchester, but to me that's kind of the gateway, especially since you've got a lot of through traffic on 9 going by on the way to the highway. So they're sort of looking into downtown. So then my concern becomes, if I think about that corner, can you do something small and it even being seen? Because it's sort of there's not a lot of space. The sidewalks, like you said, there's not a lot of room on the sidewalks. Can you do something small and have it even noticed? Or do you have to do something that maybe spans the street, or I don't know what? And will then there be enough money for it? So I don't want to, my personal feeling would be let's do downtown gateway first, but I don't want to do something inadequate because we don't have enough money. And, so again, lots of work to figure that out. Then if I go to the second part, which is really where my questions are, is the continued source of funding. I'm very hesitant to add more development fees. And, the first thing that came to mind when you talk about a nexus study, I start thinking, oh, geez, now that's going to be a lot of money. And so the first question comes to mind is, well, how much per year do we think we're trying to generate? And how many years worth of money we're trying to generate is it going to cost us to get that flow? For example, if it costs us $100,000 to get through a nexus study and we only want $25,000 a year, I'm almost tempted to say pay it out of our general fund and not go try to do a development fee. For example, I'd want to understand how much we're spending in order to get this trickle of funds, or how much trickle of funds do we really need? If I had to decide, so nexus study is kind of your legal proof that you have a reason for it, but I would also want to understand what is the totality of development not fees or whatever we call them, because you know we've got our traffic impact fees and we've got affordable housing fees in some cases, and you know what's the totality of what we're asking for and how much are we putting on top, and how does it compare to other jurisdictions? I'd want to look at the whole big picture to understand, you know, okay, maybe 1% is nothing. They are already paying 20% of their construction fees, 1% more, maybe small. So I would want to understand a lot more before making a decision on it, and I'm very hesitant to move in that direction.
Councilmember Jensen.
Will the mayor entertain a motion? So I think I hear the consensus from the council that council thanks the Arts Commission and appreciates the work they've done on their strategic plan, is generally in favor of the Gateway Art Project that we've heard about, although we don't know what form it will take, and that we're not prepared, given the variables, to consider continuing funding this evening. However, that we are willing to put aside the $25,000 for them to pursue those ideas, come back to the council or among themselves or to staff with what those ideas are. So my motion is to approve their strategic plan, endorse the Gateway Art Project that they have in mind, and to give them a startup seed money one-time fee of $25,000 as set aside in our strategic plan session earlier this year.
I'll second.
Any further questions or comments? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. And so with regard to the Nexus study, I think we'll just add that to next year's growing list of potential priorities. Okay. And with that, if there are no further comments, I'll go ahead and adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you.